In this week's episode, as we celebrate the month of February, but also Valentine's Day, I wanted to kind of show a little love to those of you who are caregivers. And I want you to discover that caregiving is leadership. So stay tuned for this week's conversation with Amy Lokken, the Sophisticated Caregiver. Hello and welcome to Got Clutter, Get Organized, the conversation. I am excited because we have a returning guest, Amy Lokken, and we're going to talk about the sophisticated caregiver. So I'm getting a little tongue-tied already because I'm so excited. Amy, thank you so much for joining us again.
Oh, Jen, thank you so much for inviting me back. We could and have talked for hours. So.
Oh, that is so true. That is so true. You know, one of my passions, in addition to organizing, is also caregiving. And that's why I really wanted to have this conversation with you because, in this month of February, as love surrounds us, and that caregiving role is really a role about love. So I wanted you to share about what made you decide to start the Sophisticated Caregiver.
Well, it's definitely powered by the Amy factor, and it really came from a recent experience of re-entering that caregiving journey once again in a very different form. Obviously, my first form was in my, maybe not obviously, but in my 30s with as a child to parent type of caregiver, where you and I have connected a tremendous amount. And, then all of a sudden finding myself recently in my mid 50s and caring for my equal, my partner, my husband. Granted, his is a bit more of a chronic and a temporary, what we've been dealing with for the last 6+ months, but it was sitting in the early 11 days of the hospital of, okay, what exactly is, here I am I thought we were too young to be in the spot. And what exactly am I being asked to do at this moment? And it was the Sophisticated Caregiver, because it's a different journey in my 50s than it was in my 30s, but at the same time, it's also different relationships. I have much more lived knowledge of what this journey looks like, and pulling from those experiences with both my parents and other family members over the last 2 decades.
And it's interesting because I became a caregiver in my 30s. And, as you said, now that you're in your mid 50s, is a different journey because you do have those experiences. Because I tell everyone, when I became a caregiver, I just kind of reacted. I didn't have a plan. It's just when things came up, okay, this is what I have to do. So thank you for sharing that. So one of the things, and I see this on your post a lot of times, you call it caregiving is leadership. So just can you, expand on what that really means?
Absolutely. It's the one thing that I think the professional world in business particularly never touches on when they talk about leadership. And as a caregiver yourself, and we often as caregivers don't refer to ourselves as that, and I get it, and we can talk about that. But when I look at a caregiver and I look at what it means to be a leader, so I'll refer to like the Good to Great, the book Good to Great. It's profound how they are so similar. And caregiving really is leadership at its highest level. When you think of the leaders that you admire, well, they probably have to learn how to navigate logistics on a whole different level. they're needing to be resilient. They're needing to bring the calm in chaos. They're needing to be nimble and adaptable. And they need to make decisions on the fly with humanity involved. I just described a caregiver in what we do. To whatever level of caregiving you're performing, you have to navigate logistics. You have to be resilient. You have to be nimble. You have to have humanity. And you have to make decisions, and decisions you are never prepared for on the fly.
Wow. You
That's
know,
what,
it's interesting because I never really thought of it that way, but the way you described it, you're right. Because the whole logistical thing, sometimes that can just be overwhelming. But you have to make decisions on the fly, like a lot of people in leadership do on a daily basis. You know,
absolutely.
questions come at you, and you're thinking, and then there's questions and there are decisions where you don't have time to, like, you know what, I need to step back. I need to lay out all the strategies, this, that, and the other. No, a lot of times it's like, it's life or death. Wow.
Absolutely. And to add a little bit more on that, we're also doing things without a title. Like, we're not looking for that title. That's where that humanity piece really comes in, and that holding dignity for others. And we are literally trying to keep things moving in the chaos behind the scenes when nobody's watching. Like, the big things of what a true great leader does is never acknowledged.
Wow. Wow. Mm-mm. So, in your experience, what are some practical changes that either you have made and caregivers can make in the home to support that peace and that balance? Because that's also part of it too. I mean, you're in the hospital, you're at the doctor's appointments, but then a majority of the time is spent in that home space.
Mhm. Yeah, that at home space, and I would have to say, having both my parents in my home, in my 30s, and now having my equal spouse, and have never had more medical equipment in my home ever in my life, and I think it was the first initial trip home. That before we went back for 11 days, and it was this overwhelm of all of these supplies, and it didn't hit me until we got home. Like, we had had the consult, and supposedly knew all of the things, and so we ordered a bunch of stuff, but then you come home and you have these medical supplies for wound vacs, and all these, like, how much gauze are we going to go through, for instance? And for me, I knew from, dealing with someone with dementia in my 30s, and how that affects all of us, that clutter around us. We're at a all-time high level of capacity.
Yeah.
So to try to find, and everything's been tipped upside down. So to try to find some normalcy, for me, I needed to be organized. So, I get him settled, and then I realize, what am I doing with all these boxes and these bags? And what is all of this? Like, I come from the design end of things, so I see the world through a designer's lens. So I think to myself, oh, he officiates. He had gotten all these smaller tubs for different things. I go into his office, I pull them all out because he hadn't used them yet, and everything, gauze, bandages, whatever it was, went in there. So at least it was contained in organized compartments, even though it was still out in the open because we need them. And then the additional supplies that didn't fit into each of those, they went into my closet. And supplies went down, and it gave structure. It was the calm in the chaos, as simple as it sounds. It was getting that and figuring out our next normal. We no longer call it a new normal. It's our next normal.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that next normal. But yeah, I mean, as you were talking, I was remembering I had to transform the living room into the bedroom.
Yeah.
I mean, and I realized I'm like, so I know I didn't move her bed, so I moved my bed was small. I moved my bed into the living room, so it was the bed, it was the couch, the TV, her favorite chair, and then it got to the point where they had, like you said, the medical bed had to come. You got the medical bed, the portable toilet, this, to that. So it's about that next normal and how all of that is going to function because in addition to the sleeping and the caring, and you've got to think about the food and how all of that is stored. So just
Yeah.
kudos to you because
Oh, it's not just one or the other.
Mhm.
It's a balancing act between, you know, people, relationships. But yeah, and to your point, I had to make him appear on camera for business meetings, working from a bed. And how do you do that? And how do you walk that fine line of the psychology of I need to conduct business, but I also am non-weight bearing on feet and I'm in my bed, and understanding and connecting those dots on that psychology, which is the essence of what I do. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and I tell people when I talk to them about caregiving that there will be that time when you transition and you will become your parents' parent.
mhm.
And sometimes it'll be smooth. A lot of times it won't because, and if you have to know your parents, because I still remember the time when she kicked out the physical therapist, but that's
Oh,
a story for another. And then you had to have those conversations without, feeling like, okay, am I going to get chastised because I am still the child? But, those things as well. So, how do you really kind of avoid losing your identity in all of this? Because you still are the wife, you still are the businesswoman and the consultant, the trainer, and all of these things while still showing up for your husband and his caregiving needs.
yeah, that identity piece, I think anybody in this position, or in the fact that it's no longer if, it's when you will find yourself in the caregiving position. And it's very much easy to lose yourself and lose your identity. And I did in my 30s. And it was definitely a learning experience because it took me a long time to refine myself. Like, geez, I'm no longer a daughter. I'm no, just so many things. So for me, it's really been that grounding, that building of my true foundation of who I am. And it's also understanding who my husband is and who my parents were. So I guess I was doing parts of this in my 30s, but it was solidified. Like uh, the mortar was finally cured in understanding that we all have values and we all have
Mm-hmm.
standards. And for me, it came down to understanding what standards of mine I was willing to lower for a short time. At the same time, what standards were non negotiable?
I liked it.
And that's the foundation of
Mm-hmm.
the identity piece. Because we're told we're supposed to look like this, we're supposed to do this, we're supposed to perform like that. And that's the thing. Presence is not performance, it's a standard.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that standard does not have to change in these challenging seasons of life. They're going to change everything about us, but it doesn't mean we have to change completely. So it's really identifying, for me it was, what are my standards? What are non-negotiables? What am I willing to let slide temporarily because this is a blip in the whole journey? And also understanding the dignity and the standards and the values of my loved one. because
Glad
I
you said
also
that.
have to protect that as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad you said that because I think for me during that period when I was a caregiver, I had to realize I had a choice. I could either, take care of mom, which that was I was going to do that, but what about the business? And for me, it was putting it on pause for a bit because I knew I just could not do both because it was just me. Um, but I like what you said about what you're willing. It's like those non-negotiables. And I think for me during that time, Amy, I found my voice because, I did what I had to do. But then when it came to my mother and I saw sometimes how she was treated, it was like, oh no, we're not going to tolerate this. So either it's going to be this or it's going to be that. And so I really found my voice. And it just proved to me during that time that wow, I could actually take care of another individual because I didn't have any children. So I was like, so it's like, oh my goodness, I can actually take care of another human being. And also, it got to the place where you see almost a change in them, where yes, they are in this position, this title, but then they get into a space where they're like, you know what, they are taking care of me. So I'm gonna step back and I'm gonna let them kind of take that lead. What you're talking about? You're talking about that caregiving is leadership. So yeah.
Well, just to solidify what you just said there, because it was really important, I believe a true nugget is understanding the right butts to be in the right seats.
Mm-hmm.
And what you did in speaking up for your mom and saying, no, this is how, that is leadership. And then it's understanding that, okay, now I can allow you to do your job so I can do mine. And I think that's a huge aspect of, again, that leadership and how, yeah.
And it's leadership, and just what you're doing, it's really showing us leadership in all aspects. It's not just logistics. Sometimes it's financial. Sometimes you have to have almost a board meeting because you're the one in charge, but then you've got all these different people who have these different roles, and it's like, okay, I'm saying yes to this but no to that. So yes, I commend you. So what message do you want as we continue this conversation, every caregiver to basically walk away with in regards to love, balance, but also leadership?
Yeah, I think as I stated, a lot of us who are in this position and currently or have been, or, well, you will be at some point in time, uh, is the fact that we may not refer to ourselves or think of ourselves as caregivers. Not because we don't see ourselves as it, but it's a heavy word and it's a word that's very revealing. And sometimes we just look at it as, I'm just helping out. I'm just being the daughter. I'm doing what anybody else would do. I want you to know that if that's where you're at, that's okay. You just don't necessarily have the language. And I know that it feels heavy to hear or to use the word, I'm a caregiver. Primarily because that carries a lot of weight and it makes things real when you actually hear yourself say it. But I want you to realize from a leadership standpoint, what you're doing is not small. And you are not alone in all that you are carrying.
So, Amy, how can people connect with you and learn more about just who you are, what you do, but also about the sophisticated caregiver? Because I'm excited. I'm always excited because I know that what the doctors told me, she only had 6 months to live, but she lived like 18 months. 18. They told me 6 weeks, 18 months.
Yeah.
So I know how important it is for you to continue to do the work that you do.
Yeah. The amyfactor.com has everything, has all the information, basically, of how to connect with me, the different things I'm bringing up for the Sophisticated Caregiver. There's free downloads because it's not if, it's when you will be a caregiver. And there's a huge piece of that pre-planning that we don't think about, kind of like, estate planning, except it's planning. And I come from, the Sophisticated Caregiver, like there's tons of resources out there and I'm happy to connect people with the resources in their area for, in-home care and all those things. But for me, like I said, I come from a design lens. So I'm going to bring, the psychology in with the design and how you really build and show up and keep that standard for you and your loved one. So it is really, there's all sorts of information on there about that. You can download a free, couple free things, or you can, there's a couple nice bundles in there for pre-caregiving and those currently in it. And I hope you find the blueprints and the maps and everything, because there is not a go-to guide that's going to direct you. Like, as much as we would all love that, just please tell me what I should expect next, or give me the guide to, there isn't one. But there is a lot of different information and guidance that I can give you. And most importantly, hold on to you, because you showing up as your best is the highest form of love for your loved one, because that shows respect for yourself and respect for them.
Yes. And of course, those watching, listening, I will have all of Amy's, links in the show page. You can connect with her directly, and I definitely suggest you do. If you are currently a caregiver, or even if at some point you will be, because as Amy shared, at some point we will be, whether it's for a spouse, our parents, friends, other relatives. So, Amy, thank you again for your time.
Thank you so much. I greatly appreciate and love talking to you.
So, what was your takeaway from this week's conversation and my wonderful conversation with Amy, the Sophisticated Caregiver? Mine was caregiving is leadership, really understanding what that means, understanding what I did in regards to logistics, in regards to communicating with her medical team, in regards to just making sure my mother was taken care of, but also I took care of myself as well. And I would love for you to share your takeaway from this week's conversation. And also make sure that if you aren't ready to subscribe to this channel, that you do so, making sure that you follow me on other social media platforms, and also check out all the links. Not only the links to this week's guests, but also the links to my ebooks, the links to my services. I also have a service specifically for you, the caregiver. And of course, just making sure that you stay connected with this community. So I want you to continue to have a clutter-free day, but have an organized week as well.